So you can see that is not a good place to be right there. Bushing is just completely shot. But that bushing, when you're moving around, this is as tight as it can be. When you're moving around, this whole shaft is moving forward and backward. Hi folks, I do have a 77 F-100 that I've owned for quite some time now. It is not a cream puff truck. Rust all over the bed. I got another bed for it. It's, probably 250,000 miles or something like that. It runs pretty good. My son bought it a while back, several years ago, and decided he didn't want it, so I ended up buying it from him. And I just like the old, I guess, dent side trucks. I've got a '69 F-250 that I'm in the process of getting back to. I've got an engine for it, and I need to get that going. But today, I'm not going to do a lot of restoration. This truck runs pretty well, as I said. It drives nice. It's got power steering, power brake. But it does have one big problem. And that is when you're driving along, you hit a bump, there's a tremendous clunk in the front suspension. Now, as it turns out, that is these. You see that I got parts here. But these are radius arm bushings for that truck. The twin I-beam suspension, a couple of radius arms, one on either side, runs from the I-beam back to the body mount on the front, or the frame mount to the back of the radius arm. So those things are shot. I'll show you what they look like here in a minute. But new bushings. I go the wrong way every time. New bushings for this thing. So you got a couple go on either side, and there we go. That's the mission for today. We have no choice but to accept it. As I say, I'm pretty confident. If I started out in this truck to drive 5,000, not 5,000, 500, 1,000, 1,500 miles, I'd be pretty confident this truck could make it. So it's not about, can I get it back on the road? It is about, can I fix the things as they come up that I know are wrong with it? And eventually I want to do some restoration on this truck. But it runs good. It does what I want for now. And with the exception of these radius arm bushings, it's a pretty solid truck. Let's see if we can fix that part of what we have here on its dock side. So you can see that is not a good place to be right there. Bushing is just completely shot. Let me see, right there. Now I'm not moving it much, there's a lot of weight on the jack here. But that bushing, when you're moving around, this is as tight as it can be. When you're moving around, this whole shaft is moving forward and backward. And it makes a pretty loud racket. So we're going to work on that and see what we can do. By the way, you need an 1 1/8" socket for that nut right there. Let's see what we can get done. Well, it's another day. I think I started this on Monday. And all kinds of things have happened. You see, I've got a ladder in the back of the truck now. On my F-100, my 77 truck, again, this truck is no cream puff. It's got hail damage and rust and everything else. But, it drove kind of rough. It wandered here and there. And yeah, I didn't realize how vague it was. Monday, I was able to get one thing done. I told you I was going to replace the radius arm bushing, and I did. And you can see there, looks pretty good. I wish I had shown you the wear on the actual radius arm where it mounts there. It has been hitting for quite some time. So it definitely needed this, and I got one side done. So now we got to get to the driver's side. It drives at least 50% better than it did. But today I'm going to work on the driver's side, try to get that done. Got sidetracked working on my neighbor. Her vinyl siding got blown off her house and revealed some damage, and I've been working on that for the last couple of days, trying to help her get that all squared away. Well, good morning. Or actually, it's still good morning. Today finds me doing a little work for my neighbor here. She lost some siding off the side of her house, and looks like we need to do a little bit more extensive work. Put some plastic up here 2 days ago, and yesterday kind of formulated a plan. Today I've got some OSB we're going to put up. We're going to wrap it. We're going to reinstall some vinyl siding. So I'll kind of bring you along at different stages. There's no need to document the work, but this is kind of what I'm doing, and taking a little deviation from trying to record things that I'm doing for myself at least, and show a little bit of another type of work that I sometimes find myself doing, either for myself or for somebody else. And in this case, as I said, doing it for my neighbor, who's also my cousin, and trying to help her out, because nobody wants their house to leak. So we're going to get cranking on this, and I'll bring you back when I give an update here for you. Updates, we've got updates. Yesterday, managed to get some work done over here, new insulation in a few spots, 3 sheets of OSB. Here, ran into some issues. We've had some water infiltration in the bottom there. You can see it's kind of buckled here, and some rot. So I'm going to have to do some fancy patchwork, put some new 2x4s, put a new sill in here, sitting on top of the joists. And over here is in pretty good shape. So I'm going to cut probably somewhere in here, put a new sill plate in all the way over to somewhere in here. New 2x4 supports, at least partially, and we'll see what we got when we're done with it. But we're going to definitely have to do quite a bit of work. So that's where we are right now. One whole day in, and it's probably almost noon right now. I'm in it to get some more things done. I got to get after it. So we'll see how we do. All right, so this is the reconstructed sill plate there and supports. I cut those off and assisted some more in, put a new board right there, a new stud right there at 48 inches from this point over here, 48 to right there. It's not perfect, and the only thing that I think is really plumb is this stud right here. But it's going to do. It's going to be fine. I'll insulate it. We'll put some OSB over it. It'll look much better here soon. So I've been involved in construction, not mechanic work. Today I want to try to get this done and then go finish wrapping the house and getting some other things done. But it's a whole other ball game, and I'll have a little clip on that somewhere along the way. But today it's time to get the driver's side radius arm bushing in place. I learned some lessons on the first side, and I will try to share those and do a little videoing of what I'm getting done. Well, here I am. I had some problems with my audio, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little bit of a voiceover here. But what I'm taking a look at now is pulling the shock absorber loose. I'm taking the bottom shock mount loose, 1 bolt, and of course you can grab that. I think it's 3/4. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think that's right. So I'm using my Harbor Freight Icon breaker bar, and you can tell that these bolts, these fasteners on this truck have not been off in quite some time. Maybe not since the truck was new. Who knows? But they do have some age on them. And what I'm doing here is kind of talking about the fact that at the top of this spring, there's a retainer clip with 2 separate bolts on it. Those bolts come through and they screw into the retainer clip. That retainer clip has some essentially a captive nut built into the retainer that just keeps that spring in the pocket there. You can see the pocket of the spring at the top there on the upper mount. So you get in there with a 9/16. It's covered with all types of things that dirt, rocks, oil, all kinds of things in there. So it's really nasty. And I was getting into that and kind of just talking through what it would take to get this loose. and I spent quite a bit of time on this component of it. Now I learned my lesson on the other side, because you don't want to take both of those bolts loose simultaneously. You want to loosen them a bit, but leave them tight enough that you can pull them all the way out, because they are exposed on the bottom edge, and of course there's corrosion, and as you start to pull them out, they get pretty tough to take out. And you have to be sure you have some structural integrity from each nut or each bolt that helps support that clip. On the other side, I broke the clip because I took one side off and ended up twisting that clip in a way that I didn't like very much, and it ended up breaking. You can't replace those clips with an exact reproduction part either. The reproduction parts are simply a straight piece of metal with a couple of notches for the bolts, and lock washers, that type of thing. But it works, but it's not the same thing. So here you see me putting some deep creep on this. I've got some seafoam deep creep. I was watching Project Farm, and Project Farm was looking at the best penetrants. What are the best penetrants to use for loosening different types of fasteners? And deep creep was pretty highly ranked. And I like seafoam. I use seafoam all the time. There are those who like other types of products, and that's fine. But I put seafoam in all. I treat all my gasoline that I put in my tractors and lawnmowers and that type of thing, and treat them all and keep them all treated. From the moment I buy the gas, I mix seafoam at 1 ounce per gallon, and it keeps everything from. I never use any gasoline that has ethanol, because ethanol has just been the death of small engine carburetors and fuel lines and all kinds of other things, and it just doesn't store. So I use not ethanol fuel treated with 1 ounce of seafoam per gallon, and I keep that stuff going. And so I bought the deep creep to try that out as well, and really like the deep creep. And you can see that taking this fastener loose is a job. There's one of the bolts, and here's the fastener itself. There's one bolt. The outer bolt outside the spring is the longer one. The shorter one is on the inside of the spring. And then the fastener itself, I think I show you here, looks like that. So it's bent to kind of nestle around that spring, and you got the captive nuts built right in. And again, you can't buy that. That is not a reproduced part. If you break that, you have to put a straight piece of metal that's kind of bent into a V, a couple of notches for the bolts to go through, and then you use lock washers and nuts. That's that simple. So it goes on differently. I didn't want that, so I tried to salvage what I could there. Now, the reality of it is, in this particular spot, the Ford service manual says you can, once you've taken the shock mount loose, you can drop the control arm down, and that upper, and taking that clip off the top, you can drop that shock mount or the control arm down, and the shock will actually come down out of the upper spring perch. And then, I'm telling you here, something, I'm not sure what, but you can take a variety of extensions and sockets, and you can get in right down through the top of the spring to loosen that nut that holds the spring. The spring, I guess it would be called the spring retainer on the bottom. It just kind of sits on top of that spring. But I think it's a 1 1/8. I think it's a 1 1/8 wrench that I'm using. And I chose to just work through the spring and use a wrench and to pull it out that way. The other side was incredibly difficult for me to take loose, and I fought it the whole time, so I wasn't looking forward to this one. As it turns out, it wasn't nearly so bad, and you can see that I'm just using the wrench and I'm being able to pull it loose. Again, you could drop the control arm, use some extensions. Maybe it would be very tough, I think, to use any type of an impact on it, but you probably could. Here, I'm not sure exactly what the process is going to be, but I believe I may be dropping this control arm down and trying to kind of wrestle this around a bit. You can see how loose the spring is right there. So the spring's very loose. That control arm will drop all the way down. I've got this frame supported back behind the radius arm mount back there, and you can see that the spring will come right loose. So you, with enough manipulation, you could probably put a long extension in there. You could use a ratchet. You could perhaps use an impact wrench, although I don't think so. And it's pretty tough to loosen, even with the penetrant and everything else. So it's a little bit of a pain, but you can get it done. And you can see how the I-beam just kind of flops there. The control arm goes up and down. And you can see how the end of the spring fits right up into that pocket in the upper mount. I think I showed you what the wrench was, but I think it's 1 1/8. At any rate, it's a good size wrench. I actually used a large tool set that I bought, but you can buy at Northern Tool, or you could probably buy one at Harbor Freight, and you can pull that nut off of that mount, or that retainer on the bottom. You can pull the spring off, and the retainer sits right in that small end of the spring. Sits right on top of it, and you'll see this the washer as I work on this and put it back together. There's the washer right there. It sits right down in the spring, holds that in place. Underneath that is a cup. You can see that this cup sits right over. It is recessed up into the spring. It sits over another nut on the big bolt that holds the radius arm onto the I-beam. Now these take a lot of abuse, and both mine had a little slight hole rusted into them, but again, it's not a major issue. You can move on with it. Now here's that bolt that runs up through the radius arm and through the I-beam, and you can see that this truck hasn't been greased in a while. I've had it for quite some time. I know I've greased it, but I need to clean that fitting off and do some more greasing here. So you can see that there's the nut on top there, and this is my large set of tools that I was telling you about. I got this from Northern Tool many years ago to work on my tractor, and this is the big breaker bar that came in that kit. There's I think it's let me see, it's 3/8. I think it's a 3/4 drive, and of course when you need a little extra something, then you use a pipe, and that pipe is going to help me break things loose when I need it. I learned on the other side that rather than trying to take the nut loose, it was actually easier for me to take loose the bolt. Now, here's something to keep in mind. I am actually, at this point, you can see that I'm trying to tighten this bolt. I'm pulling it, it's kind of turning it clockwise, and I had to stop for a second, and I said, hold on, you see what I did there. And maybe you did, but when you're working upside down, you got to always keep in mind righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, and you just, for the most part, and you want to be sure you got yourself oriented correctly. I know that, and I do that, but every now and then you gotta check your reality, and here I am breaking that loose. So you can see that the bolt itself turns pretty easily, and I found that it was easier to put a breaker bar on that and to just put a wrench on the top and kind of rest that against something, the frame or something up there, or hold it. In this case, I'm just kind of holding it and trying to get it to turn. It is a process, and you got to work on it quite a bit to get that thing to loosen up. So you're going to spend some time on it, and you are going to work hard on that component of it. So here I am just kind of going through this process. I got my big ratchet on there, and this thing has big teeth. It works great, so can't recommend it highly enough. I've had it, oh goodness, probably close to 20 years, and works very well. So, here I am. I got it at the top there, and I'm just kind of wrapping this up, and it's very tough to hold the ratchet up on it and to be able to turn everything at the same time. Here, an air ratchet or something along those lines, or even an impact wrench would probably be fine on that. You got room now without the spring. Here I have this out, and you can kind of manipulate. You can move that whole I-beam and the radius arm back and forth. All the nuts on this are the same size, so they're all 1 1/8, I think. And here I'm just kind of turning this a little bit and kind of unscrewing it, and it'll pull this whole radius arm, or the bolt, out of the radius arm and the I-beam. So that comes loose, and a little bit of time, a little bit of effort, and you can get this whole thing loose here. Now, once that's pulled loose, you see I can turn it with my hand at this point. I could probably move things around, jostle it a little bit, or grab a punch and drive it out from the top side, but it's not that big a deal. I'm just going to unscrew it here, and this helps me have a look at the bolt itself, which has no wear. It's perfect shape. I'll clean it up with a wire brush, put it back on there, put some penetrant on it, maybe some grease, something that'll just help keep it from rusting as much. And there you go. Now you can see at this point the only thing holding the radius arm is friction on the I-beam, and on the back still got the nut that holds the radius arm onto the mount. Look at the bushing. Bushing is eaten up, and so that's rough right there. Worn out, eaten up. So we're going to be able to take this apart, and we'll see what else we got going. Here's the I think this is the actual passenger side bushing. You can see how worn out that is, and I'll show you the other one here because I think I have them both out on this clip. All right, I promised I would give you a little bit of an update. The passenger side bushing, and this part wasn't too bad. But on the driver's side, look at this bushing. Oh my goodness. And also, this is the other side, which would be on the back. It says on the back. And kind of fits over this snout on this bushing. So you can see that whatever was going on, it wasn't making contact, or it was making contact. Let me see if I can give you a light here. Well, maybe not. Probably not. All right, here we go. So you can see this. Not worn too badly. I'm going to grease that up. A little bit of wear, but it'll be tight with the new bushing. I'm going to grease that up. Put that in place. Clean up my hardware here. I got to clean up all the different cups and things, and then bolt and other nuts and things. This cup over here. Clean up my retainer clip for the spring. Get all that done and be ready to rock and roll here shortly and put it back together. I'll bring you along for that, and we will get it back on the road. And here we are back under the truck. The control arm is loose and everything is in place. You have to take all this apart so you've got the room to slide that control arm forward and pull it out of that mount. You can see I've got my rubber gloves on there. I try to wear rubber gloves to protect my hands. And then I put the I guess they are rubber gloves. They are, I can't remember the type. And then I put my rubber work gloves on over top of that to protect those rubber gloves because they just flat out get torn quickly. So here I put just a light coating of grease on there to be sure things aren't squeaking and squealing and all the other things that might happen. A little bit on the bushings, not much, just a very light coating. And probably not necessary. It probably would work fine, but I'm just putting enough to put something on there. And using, I don't know, I've probably had that tub of wheel bearing grease for about 100 years. But at any rate, I'm going to put that on there, smear it around a little bit, put a little light coating on it, and we will put it together. Now, I want you to pay attention to something here. When you're going to do something like this, you want the snout of that bushing to stick through the mount. But there has to be something on the back side of that bushing to hold it in place. And you'll see, I put it right on that right on the radius arm, I should say, and didn't put the big washer that goes behind that. So there's a big washer that's cupped, and the concave part of that washer needs to be facing the bushing. So it kind of nestles that bushing, centers it up, and lets you put it right in there. So here I am raising this up and kind of getting things together, and I'm feeling good about life because obviously I'm progressing and about to get things done. And I love to wear, I'll tell you a little bit about this, I love to wear my old ratty coveralls. They look bad, and here they're very dirty because I've been rolling around on the floor. But I can wear, fairly decent clothes out there, and they're not going to get so dirty when I'm working in an environment that's just greasy and nasty. So I wear coveralls quite a bit. Here I am going to wrestle this thing, and I think I pull the I-beam right off my jack here, and it grabs me. So I think I did right there. Yep, there it was. You can see me kind of jump because it hurt. It hurt a little bit. But I realized, you see, I got to put that washer back on. So here you see, now I've got the washer in place, and I have the bushing on the back side, and I'm going to center the jack up back under the I-beam. We're going to lift this thing up enough so I can stab that radius arm right into the mount. Now, I noticed here that the brake hose was a little taut there, but it didn't hang there long, and it's a relatively new brake hose. I worked on that and replaced it. But I'm putting the bushing on the back side here, and now I'm just kind of tightening this radius arm up, and then I'll start getting everything else back together to be sure that I've got the whole process sort of in place and kind of know what's taking place with it here. Tighten this up as tight as you can. I don't know what the torque rating is, but I figure if you tighten it until you can't tighten it anymore, well, that's about all there is. So you give it, tighten it, 100%. Everything you can do, you tighten it that tight, and you leave it alone. It needs to be tight, and that's good enough. So I have that in place now, and the bushing's all squared away. I've got a bearing, or I've got a washer on this front side of the bushing. I got one on the back side. I got the nut in place. Now it's time to put the bolt back up through the radius arm and back through the I-beam here. So I got to line those things up. I kind of grab an alignment tool, could be a screwdriver, something like that, and stab it in there, and you see that I've got it back in place. I've got the lower nut installed. I cleaned everything up, got the rust off of it, and put just a really light coating of grease on that as well. If I were worried about a concourse restoration, maybe I'd go ahead and clean this up and paint it, but it's far from show quality. There's the hole in my cup. Cup sits right back on top of that bolt, and kind of sits right on top of that nut as well. So there's where the cup goes, and then you take the spring. Yeah, I'm explaining this. Cup goes on there. Even with the rust, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. You take your spring, you put the small end of the spring down on there. There it is right there. Large end of the spring goes up. This end of the spring is going to nestle into that pocket into the upper perch. I'm trying to show you that this is where it goes right there. And as long as you've got those two things in place, you can do a little bit of work with it, but once you start tightening things down, you're not going to do as much. So I drop this down. I can, again, put just a tad of grease on there as where the spring's going to rest on the cup. Drop the spring right on there and align the top so it's where it needs to be. Even though you can't see it, believe me, it's there. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the retaining washer. I think I may have to drop that down a little bit more or something. I'm trying to kind of take a look at things here. Put the retaining washer on top and install the other, or the last, I suppose, nut on top of this thing. So you put that down. The concave portion of that washer is going to face up, and it just kind of sits right on top of that small part. Install the nut, and off we go. We are headed off to the races here. So jack that. Well, I'm going to jack it up a little bit, but my problem is I've got to get that spring aligned more closely. It's got to be there, and I can push it right up in there a little bit. And I need to hold the spring because I'm still going to tighten it with my wrench. Again, I could put an extension, tighten that up with an extension and a ratchet somehow. If I were worried about production in an automotive shop, maybe I would do that. But for me, I just said, rather than fight with all that and deal with it, it's not going to take that long. I'm going to go ahead and use my wrench here, get everything together, and just tighten it up as best I can. So here I am, just kind of working my way through that. And you can see that it went pretty quickly. It was probably a 10-minute process, and I had everything tightened up and ready to go. So I'm working on it here. And here I am, I think, just kind of putting the finishing touches on things. I think I'm putting the appropriate amount of torque on this. I'm using my torque wrench skills here, and it's kind of like a spidey sense, the torque sense. I'm going to get that done, and that's all it's going to be, because that's all I can do. I can't tighten it anymore. Jack it up, make sure that top of the spring is nestled in the spring perch there that I showed you earlier. Get everything in place, and then all I need to do is to put my I'm going to put, I think this is the shock absorber, the lower mount on the shock. I'm going to put that back in place. So that's the bolt for that. Get that in place, and then I'll put the upper clip that goes around the upper part of that spring. I'll get that in here in a moment. So I'm tightening this up, get that all squared away, and I think my wife was walking through there, came by and said hi to me or something, and just kind of wrapping this element here up pretty quickly. Can get that done, and we'll see what else. I think the only thing left at this point would be to put the upper clip on and to put the wheel back on. Yeah, I think we're in good shape and everything. I'm just checking everything to be sure everything's squared away and tight. There's the clip. I'm going to put just a little bit of grease into that as well to lubricate the reassembly. We'll get that together, and off we go. So pretty close to getting it done. Once you kind of understand what you're doing and you want to get really cranking on it, you can do a side, and probably, I don't know, considering the fighting for the bolts or the nuts that haven't been taken out in a while, it might take you a couple hours per side. It shouldn't take that long, but it might if you really have to fight something that's tough to get loose. Start spraying that stuff down with some penetrant way before you ever get to that point, and you'll be better. Well, there it is, all back together, everything back in place. And you can see that the bushing looks much better now. I think you can see that the bushing looks much better now. Let's see if I can give you, yeah, well, that's about all it's going to be, I think. Bushing, take my word for it, the bushing is much better now. And everything else is back in place. Got to put the wheel on it, take it for a spin, and I'll give you an update on that. Well, we got her all wrapped up here, and the old 77 is definitely better than it was. The front end is pretty high. You can see here now that, sorry about the finger, you can see now that the front end's up there. I got a little bit of weight in the back, not much. You can see that the front end's sitting pretty high. I'm working on my neighbor's house, and so I've got supplies in the back of the truck. You can see it sitting a little bit higher, and boy, does it drive better. No clunking. One of the things, the thing that got me was kind of out of the blue. Had the truck for several years and there was no clunking. The steering was always a little vague, but all of a sudden, I don't know, in the last year or so, maybe a little longer, I drive it maybe once a week, and I use it to take trash to the dump and that type of thing. So it's not an everyday vehicle. And, at some point I started noticing the clunk, and I pulled the rotors. I didn't pull the rotor, but I pulled the tire off and looked at suspension and was trying to figure out what was going on, and finally figured out that what was going on was the crazy bushing wear. And so yeah, just replace your bushings. Not very much money, not really a very tough job, and I need to probably, there are other bushings in that I-beam suspension that I need to work on. Probably need to check my kingpins on each side. But there are people who complain about the Ford twin I-beam suspension, and they want to put something like a Lincoln front end or something like that. The heck with, no thank you. I want the truck to be a truck, and I want it to be what I remember driving as I grew up. I had my green 74 short bed belonged to my older brother. One of the vehicles I learned to drive on was that green 74 F-100 Custom. I liked the feeling of the twin I-beam I like the primitive nature of these trucks. I love to drive them. I love to drive this truck too, but my challenges with this truck have been documented. And now my key fob doesn't work. So I don't know what's going on. I got to figure out, neither of my key fobs work with this truck. Something went haywire, and I don't know what it is. I got to diagnose that. I forgot about it. The last time I drove it has been about a week ago. This happened. I don't know what happened, and I haven't had a chance to even look at it. So now this truck is up and running. It has been running the whole time, but I repaired the passenger side bushing on Monday, and then today is Thursday. Finally got the other side done, took it for a brief test drive, and it drives very nicely now. Suspension is nice. It needs a lot of other work, but for right now, that's going to be it. Well, it's a windy day, and I hope you can hear me, but this is kind of the finished product, so to speak. So a couple spots where we didn't have exactly, the house itself isn't very square, and so a couple spots up there aren't the best, but they're going to be all right. I'm going to wrap it, and I think everything will be good. So that's the next stage. Window's crooked. We're going to put a new window in. I'm going to rough out around that with the wrap, and then we'll take this window out. I just put it back up temporarily, and we'll get all that squared away as well. I've got my old 77 truck here sitting high in the front end now with those new radius arm bushings. Now I can't believe the difference in the truck. So here we go, and I'll show you when I get this wrap done. All right, so for the most part, things are the way I want them to be. Got everything OSB'd up there and taped and covered with vapor barrier. Got to put the window in straight. Got a new window ordered, and when that's done, the vinyl siding will go back up. So project has come quite a ways, and I feel pretty good about it. It's not perfect, and I don't expect it to be perfect, and I don't live in the same neighborhood, so it's okay. Got to do the job, and much better than it was. So I'll update you when I get a little farther along. Okay, this is a quick look at the actual finished product. I think I've said finished a few times. This is it. The siding is up. I used old siding that was laying around. I replaced some things that were damaged, so they have some slight variation. This is the back side of the house. Minimal cost, no cost for new siding, and it works. There's the new window, and everything looks pretty darn good. So pretty happy with that. And it's raining like crazy, so I'm wrapping that up, and it's been raining for a while here. Very soggy, but I wanted to do a quick clip just to show you kind of the finished product. Looks much better than what we had when we started. This is the road test. Well, I've had several road tests really, but this is a road test after my radius arm bushing repair. There's a little bit of rattling that's coming from my doors. I need to do door seals on this truck. I can assure you that the front end is very solid now. No thumps, no bumps. Drives pretty well, pretty tight. So we have a successful installation of radius arm bushing. And that wraps it up. I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll be back with more updates. Got some on my Mach 1 coming up, as well as my 69 F250. Until then, endeavor to persevere.